There's a photograph of you somewhere from before you existed. Your body is in it. Your face, your hands, the shape of you. Someone is holding you and smiling at the camera. And behind those eyes, there is nobody home yet. Not nobody in a cruel sense. The lights were on. That infant felt hunger and warmth and the shock of a loud noise. But there was no one in there thinking I am here. No inner voice. No sense of being a person having a life. That came later, and it came in pieces, and you were not present for the assembly. You did not begin at birth. You were built afterward. You probably assume consciousness is something you either have or you don't, like a light with a switch. Off in the womb, on at birth, running ever since. But the real answer is far stranger. Consciousness is not a switch. It is a construction site, and we can watch it being built stage by stage, in real time, in every child who has ever lived. And what gets built is not what you think it is. Let me show you the moment it starts to appear. In 1970, a psychologist named Gordon Gallup did something deceptively simple. He wanted to know whether an animal could recognize itself. So he anesthetized chimpanzees and painted a red mark on their foreheads, somewhere they could not see without help. Then he gave them a mirror. The chimps looked at the mirror, and then they reached up and touched their own foreheads. Not the mirror, themselves. Do you see what that requires? To touch your own head because of something in a mirror, you must already understand that the thing in the mirror is you. You need a concept of yourself as an object in the world, a body that other things can look at. Most animals never pass this test. They treat the reflection as another animal or ignore it entirely. The list of species that do pass is startlingly short. Chimpanzees, orangutans, dolphins, elephants, magpies, a handful of others, argued over to this day. Everything else on the planet, including animals we consider clever, looks into a mirror and sees a stranger forever. Which tells you that whatever this is, it is not a natural consequence of having a brain. It is rare and expensive, and it evolved separately in creatures with almost nothing else in common. Now here is the part that matters for you. Human infants fail it too. Put a mark on a 1-year-old's face and show them a mirror, and they will smile at the baby in the glass. Some will try to reach behind it, looking for the other child. They will not touch their own face because they do not yet know that the face is theirs. Then, somewhere around 18 months to 2 years, something changes. The child looks at the mirror, hesitates, and reaches for their own forehead. Somebody just arrived. That is not a small developmental milestone. That is a mind discovering that it is a thing in the world. And it happens on a schedule, roughly the same schedule, in children across the planet. But recognizing yourself in a mirror is only one floor of the building, and the psychologist Philippe Rochet has spent decades mapping the rest. His work describes self-awareness developing in levels, each one built on the last. First, mere confusion, where the reflection is just an interesting event. Then differentiation, noticing that this reflection moves when you move. Then situation, understanding that the thing in the mirror is located where you are. Then identification, the mirror moment, that is me. And then, later, something far heavier. Permanence, and then self-consciousness. The understanding that you existed yesterday and will exist tomorrow. And that other people can see you and judge you and have opinions about you that you cannot control. Notice what arrives at that final level. Embarrassment, shame, pride, the blush. There's a reason a 2-year-old will hide their face after doing something wrong, and a 6-month-old never will. Shame requires a self that can be seen from the outside. You cannot feel embarrassed until you have built a model of how you appear in someone else's mind. So the self did not arrive all at once. It came in layers, and each layer added a new way of being a person and a new way of suffering. But this still leaves the deepest question untouched. Why build any of this? Why would a brain need to know about itself at all? The neuroscientist Michael Graziano has offered an answer that reframes the whole problem, and it starts somewhere unexpected. It starts with attention. Your brain processes vastly more information than it can act on. Every moment, signals flood in from your eyes and ears and skin, far more than could ever be useful at once. So brains evolved a solution. They select. They boost some signals and suppress others. That selection process is attention, and it is one of the oldest and most valuable tricks a nervous system has. But here is the problem. Attention is a resource, and resources must be managed. To control something well, a system needs a model of that thing. Your brain has a model of your body, which is why you can move your arm without watching it. It has a model of the space around you. Graziano's argument is that your brain also built a model of its own attention, a simplified sketch of what it is focusing on and what that focusing feels like from the inside. And that sketch, that rough internal cartoon of the act of paying attention, is what you experience as awareness. Which means the feeling of being a conscious observer might not be a mysterious extra ingredient at all. It might be the brain's own user interface, a simplified summary it keeps of what it is doing, built for exactly the same reason it keeps a model of your arm. Not to be true, to be useful. Sit with that for a second. The sense you have right now of being someone behind your eyes, watching, could be a description your brain wrote about itself. And like every description, it leaves things out. And there's a second payoff to building that model, one that may be the whole reason it's stuck. Once your brain can model attention, it can point that model at other people. Think about what you do without effort. You walk into a room and you know instantly where everyone is looking. You know when someone has noticed you. You know, from a glance, whether the person across the table is following what you are saying or has drifted somewhere else. You are running a model of another mind's attention continuously in the background, and you have never once been taught how. For a species that survives by cooperating, that ability is worth more than teeth. Knowing what someone else is attending to is the first step to knowing what they want, what they intend, and whether they can be trusted. And the machinery that does, it looks suspiciously like the machinery that produces your own sense of awareness. Which suggests something strange. The tool you use to know yourself may be the same tool you use to know everyone else, and it may have been built for them first. Antonio Damasio approaches it from another direction, and his version adds something crucial. He distinguishes between different levels of self, and the foundation is not thought at all, it is the body. Underneath everything, your brain is constantly monitoring your internal state. Heart rate, temperature, hunger, the chemistry of your blood. It never stops. That endless monitoring produces a baseline hum, a raw feeling of being a living body right now. That is the floor. And on top of it, memory and language build the story. A self with a past and a future, a name, a history, a set of plans. Which means you're not one self. You're at least two, stacked. A wordless animal sense of existing, and a narrated character built on top of it who claims to be in charge. And you can feel the scene between them. Everyone has had a moment of waking somewhere unfamiliar, and for a second or two, simply existing before knowing who they are. The floor is there before the story loads. Now here is where it comes back to you, and where it stops being abstract. If the self was built, then the building is still happening. You are not a finished thing that was completed at 18 months. That construction site never closed. Every new context you enter adds something. Every relationship draws out a slightly different version of you, and the story you tell about who you are is being edited constantly. You have felt this. You're not the same person with your oldest friend as you are in a job interview. Not performing exactly. The self is genuinely assembled fresh for each situation, from the same materials in a slightly different shape. And that layer that arrived last, the one that knows other people are watching, never switches off. That is why a stranger's glance can change your posture. Why you replay a conversation at 2 in the morning. That is not weakness. It is the newest and most expensive part of your mind, doing exactly what it was built to do in a world that now gives it 1,000 strangers a day instead of 30 people in a village. Which raises the question worth carrying out of here. If the self is built, who is doing the building? The unsettling answer is that nobody is. There is no architect standing outside the process. The construction is the thing. There is no you separate from the layers, waiting for them to be finished so you can move in. The layers are all there is, and they are still going up. And that is not a loss. Look at what it means. If you were a fixed object, you would be stuck with whatever you were handed. But a thing that is still being built can be built differently. The story is being written now in the present tense, and you're somewhere inside the writing of it. You did not choose the floor you were given, the temperament, the body, the wordless hum of being alive. But every layer above, it was assembled from experience, and experience keeps arriving. That means the person you are is not a verdict. It is a draft. There's a photograph of you somewhere from before you existed. Your body is in it, and nobody is home. But look closely, because that infant was not empty. It was a construction site with the foundations poured, waiting for the rest, and everything you have ever been was still to be built, including whoever you are going to be by the end of today.